Well, hello, we're in John's Gospel, in chapter 12, and we'll do verses 9 to 19. So let's read them, reading from the ESV. When the large crowd of the Jews learned that Jesus was there, they came, not to an account of him, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. So the chief priests made plans to put Lazarus to death as well, because on account of him, many of the Jews were going away and believing in Jesus. The next day, the large crowd that had come to the feast heard that Jesus was coming to Jerusalem. So they took branches of palm trees and went out to meet him, crying out, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, even the King of Israel." And Jesus found a donkey and sat on it, just as it is written, "Fear not, daughter of Zion. Behold, your king is coming, sitting on a donkey's colt." His disciples didn't understand these things at first, but when Jesus was glorified, then they remembered that these things had been written about him and had been done to him. The crowd that had been with him when he called Lazarus out of the tomb and raised him from the dead continued to bear witness. The reason why the crowd went to meet him was that they had heard he had done this sign. So the Pharisees said to one another, "You see that you are gaining nothing. Look, the world has gone after him." Okay, so we've got the crowds coming. They want to see Lazarus. They want to see Jesus, but they want to see Lazarus being raised from the dead. It doesn't happen very often. They're fascinated by it. And today you can get, every so often you hear things of so-called near-death experiences. Well, let me just say I have no interest in near-death experiences. Tales that might fascinate people. I'm no interest in them whatsoever. Maybe I'm being overly sceptical. But what I would say is, how does the Bible approach Lazarus' near-death, complete death experience? It says he was dead. He died, fully dead. And he was brought back to life, fully brought back to life. That's the interest the Bible shows in this. If you're interested in near-death experiences, well, so be it. But there's better things to spend your time on. And then you get the reaction of the priests, the religious leaders. They said, "Put Lazarus to death!" Because he was attracting even more. He used to be attracting crowds anyway. Now he's attracting even more. It was like, "Put Lazarus to death! Put Jesus to death!" Not a very intelligent response, is it? But we get the same today. We don't get people put to death for their faith in this country. But we have these days what's called cancel culture. I mean, if you object to say that a trans woman is not a woman, trans man is not a man, you cannot change biological sex, being a woman is an adult human female, these things get objected to. Instead of facing up to biological reality, people just act in utterly irrational ways, as the chief priests are. Also, Lazarus had been brought back from the dead. You think they might have worked out that if they killed him again, wasn't quite that was the end of the matter for killing him. That Jesus could bring him back from the dead again. But the chief priests were not very intelligent, and many people today are not very intelligent. Cause a lot of trouble, but they're not very intelligent. Then we get the triumphal entry. And this is recorded in all four Gospels. John gives a few details. He just he's focusing more on the meaning of it all. He's got, and there's two quotes from Scripture. First of all, from Psalm 118, 25 and 26. That's what it says, "Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." It's actually quite interesting if you look at the whole passage. Or I'll just read a few verses before the bit that's actually quoted, from verse 19 to 20 onwards. "Open to me the gates of righteousness, that I may enter through them and give thanks to the Lord." And that's what Jesus does. He opens the gates of righteousness for us. "This is the gate of the Lord, and the righteous shall enter through it." Jesus is the only way to the Father, the only way to know God, the only way to be with God. He says, "I thank you that you have answered me and have become my salvation." Jesus is our salvation. The stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. And the chief priests were rejecting Jesus. And he's the fulcrum, the pivot of all God's plans. Everything, all of God's purposes and plans are built upon Jesus and are fulfilled through Jesus. Then the bit from Zechariah that comes about coming on a donkey. That's from Zechariah 9 verse 9. And if you read verse 11 in chapter 9 of Zechariah, it says, "As for you also, because of the blood of my covenant with you, I will set your prisoners free from the waterless pit." And it's interesting that, both these passages are quoted from, they're dealing with salvation. And Jesus said at the Last Supper, this wine is the blood of the new covenant. His death, the blood he shed on the cross, is the blood of the new covenant, and which sets us free. So there's Jesus say that these things so closely related to our salvation. Then it says the disciples did not understand. Now the chief priests didn't understand, the Pharisees didn't understand either, but their reaction to it was just to kill him. I said, not very intelligent. The disciples understood later, when Jesus was glorified. If all you do is see Jesus, see a good man or a great teacher, you don't see Jesus. So only when you see him as the Son of God, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, that we truly start to understand who Jesus is. We need to understand him in all his humanity. We need to understand him in all of his divinity as well. We need both. If you only got one, you don't know Jesus. Don't fool yourself. And the crowd's going out and the Pharisees are getting desperate. What are we gaining? Look, the world has gone after him. So, we'll leave it at that point and we'll continue with John's Gospel next week.